And something that really is relevant to the topic of today's conference is, and it's really changed since a lot of us last met in person. I know that some of you may have gone along to PASA events in person since, but this need for digital technology, this need for digital procurement, and quite frankly, the COVID crisis shaved 5 to 10 years off our adoption timeframes for a lot of our organizations. And most of my clients, procurement leaders and finance leaders and supply chain leaders around the globe, have found for the most part this uphill battle to fund and implement these technologies isn't as much of an uphill battle anymore. And I'm sure some of you might feel that way. Some of you may not feel that way. But what you see here is a recent survey of boards of directors on how COVID has changed their business initiatives, right? So they've responded to the crisis with a real reboot of their digital strategies and with targeted investments in key digital capabilities across the organization, right? And the major implication I would say here is that procurement organizations are also digitizing their own functions at an accelerating rate. And one of my colleagues, one of Gartner's experts, one of those folks that writes the Gartner Magic Quadrants, if you're familiar with them, predicts that by 2024, 50% of organizations will have near real-time analytics for procurement, right? That might sound quite far-fetched to some of us, but in a few slides' time, I want to share with you some benchmarking data which illustrates just how quickly procurement is reaching that digital maturity alongside other functions. I think Jenny mentioned legal and other functions. So this will either confirm that you're on the right track or that there's technologies that maybe you aren't considering that perhaps you should be considering, right? So before we get there, let's look at what happens if we get this right? This investment in technology. As you can see on the right-hand side of this page, we identified that companies who are excelling at analytics and automation have far greater results when it comes to visibility, right? They have 54% better visibility than the average organization. They have 47% higher execution speed. They have 37% better spend compliance, right? And of course, greater savings. Although I think, as Jenny mentioned, savings is very, very difficult in this environment. And these are all metrics that most procurement functions care about. These aren't the only metrics, of course, right? We do care about other things. You can imagine that business partner satisfaction from that increased speed, right, that analytics and automation brings. The increased visibility probably allows for more productive sourcing events and supplier review meetings, leading to better outcomes. Again, as Jenny mentioned from Spend Matters, this idea of supply collaboration supporting CPOs to achieve their objectives. And of course, the greater spend compliance, well, I suppose that keeps us off the front page of the newspaper. But as you can see on this page, we've recently published some procurement technology adoption benchmarking, right? Which technologies are procurement organizations investing in or planning to invest in or have already invested in? And the reason I bring this up is to show you where most have already made investments, and that's in the blue, right? So this is things that they've already invested in. And then where they're planning to invest, which is in gray. And the first thing to say here, when I compare the implementation rates now in, for example, procure to pay or spend analysis or e-sourcing, and of course, supplier risk technologies, if I compare that to just a couple of years ago, I'd say those rates are up at least 20 to 25%, compared to where they were back then. And if we were all meeting again at the Sydney Boulevard Hotel in Sydney or the Bayview Eden Hotel in Melbourne, and I said, hey, everyone, raise your hands. Those of you who have put forward a request to your CFO, requesting investment in a supplier risk management technology platform or module. Well, prior to COVID, if I asked that question in, say, 2019, only a handful of you would have said that they accepted it, and most of you probably would have said that they knocked it back. Now, you fast forward to 2022, or even if you fast forward to 2020 or just 2021, CFOs actually started proactively saying to their procurement leaders, hey, that supplier risk management technology that you were harping on about in 2018, now's the right time. Here's the funding to go and protect our organization's revenue streams or protect us from, concerns around ESG, right? And I've heard so many of these stories in the last 2 and a bit years, right? And I'm actually starting to see a lot more around the thing that Jenny spoke about, this idea of supply collaboration when it comes to organizations really wanting to invest in things like supplier relationship management technology, supplier information management platforms, things that I wasn't necessarily hearing just a few years ago. But as you can see, as we move away from these core technologies into some of the more advanced next generation technologies, we see that there are few who have implemented these systems, right? And there's a sizable portion of organizations who are saying, look, at some point in the not too distant future, I do want to be investing in these new next gen applications, right? So the point here, really, I just want to encourage you to use some of this benchmarking when it's sent across to you after the presentation today. Get the conversation started. What are the outcomes you're trying to drive as a procurement function, right? Which of these technologies might support that outcome? Beyond, say, freeing up capacity, what actionable insights will these technologies help us to develop and use to build that credibility with our stakeholders to pursue a course of action, right? That's best for both the organization and procurement's goals. And